let's get started. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how we can customize our user roles and the importance of that, as well as going through some navigation, kind of thinking of being brand new to QuickBooks, how to navigate all around there, looking at different features, different customer centers, vendor centers, inventory centers, and just kind of, how do we navigate in QuickBooks to get to where we want to get to look at reports and transactions. Okay, so I'm going to head over to my sample file. And again, we're going to talk about navigation inside of QuickBooks, as well as talking about the user and role setup and ways we can customize those. At my QuickBooks file, this is your home screen. You don't have to have this up. It is found here at your home page. I like it, especially if you're new to QuickBooks. It really helps you on what's next. So you can see it's broken down into this top section is what we call our vendor center and all the activities that we can go. So our money going out. Our middle section is our customer section and all the activities that we can perform for our money going in. And then if you've got payroll set up, this is going to be our employee center and all of those type of transactions. Over here on the right side of your screen, those are more of our core accounting functions when it comes to, reviewing our setup, chart of accounts, our reconciling aspects, being able to look at our different registers. Now, what you see on your screen, at your home screen, is going to be based on your setup. So let's talk about the setup itself when it comes to navigating. So when you start a new QuickBooks file, the first thing you want to do is you want to set up your preferences on how we're going to use this file. And then, of course, that's going to lead us into then setting up our users and their roles. So first, let's talk about the setup side of things. So if we go to Edit and we go down to Preferences, you're going to see a pop-up. And you're going to see on the left side, these are all the different, I don't want to say modules, but different areas of the database that need to be set up and decided upon. And then you're going to see two tabs. You've got My Preferences and you've got Company Preferences. So My Preferences is what the individual is going to see when they log in and changes that they can make. They're very limited. So for example, under accounting, the only thing that they can do is autofill a memo. You can see there's nothing under benefits, nothing under bills. Mostly what I see change is their desktop view, so they can change the color, as well as the beep. A lot of people don't like the beep and the sound, so they can switch and tell the system when you're saving a transaction, do not do the little beep that does default. Company preferences is changes to the company file, the database that affects the whole company. So this would be logged in as the admin making the changes. And the majority of the time, you have to be in single user mode so that the change can go across the full database. And this is what I was talking about seeing different things at your home screen. This gets changed by what you choose and how your business is going to function. So for example, under sales and customer, you're going to say, I want to enable the sales order. This would then populate it on your home screen. If you don't, that's not going to be an option on your home screen. The same with inventory. If you don't do inventory, you wouldn't activate the purchase orders. So this little box here for purchasing and receiving would not be on your home screen. Okay, so this is kind of set up when it comes to how the company is going to be used. There's lots of different features and functions in there. If you need help with the company setup and kind of understanding, that is something that Fourlane can help you with. Okay, so that's kind of high level navigating to our preferences and our home screen. Now let's talk about the customization of user roles, and then I'll kind of go back and forth when we talk about the navigation. Okay, so setting up user roles is found at the company level. So if you go to company You go to users, and then you're going to go to set up users and roles. Now, I will tell you, if you do this in your file, one, you have to be logged in as the admin, and two, when you select this, it's going to pop up and it's going to make you enter the admin password again. Okay, so when you start off in the file, the only user you're going to have is the admin. So this has to be set up before anyone else can log into the file. We always recommend that the admin user is not used daily. This role should be limited to when we are making company changes only. And the reason for that is because you want the audit trail to be the most effective. And how that would be effective is if each person logs in with their own username, you then can identify when changes are made to transactions, who did it. If everyone is logged in as the same name, and instead you do basically kind of like an AR role, you will not be able to see if there are multiple people in the AR role who made the changes. Now, I will tell you that, and that might have been a little confusing, you cannot have more than one person log in with the same username, but you can have the same user role for multiple people. Okay, so now let's talk about customizing the roles themselves. So if we come over here to our role list, QuickBooks has provided you several different roles in all aspects of what is used inside of QuickBooks. Okay, so we're going to look at some standards, and this is what the standard that they believe, for example, the accounts payable role should have access and function to. Okay, so if we come down here to view permissions, it's going to show us for the accounts payable role. Oh, I'm going to switch over here. I like to do the edit because we can see it better. So if we select edit, we can see for the accounts payable role, all the different areas that they have access to. So for example, you can see that I've got accounting and there's 0, meaning that you don't see any green in the circle. That means they have no access to accounting functions. So let's hop in there to see what that means. So if I hit the plus button, beside the accounting, these are all the functions that are considered accounting roles. So being able to create a journal entry, being able to see different registers, being able to manage the fixed assets. Now, in a small company, the accounts payable person might do some of these functions. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how we would customize it to give them different access instead of just the standard role access. So let's come down here and let's talk about the banking. So you can see that this green circle is kind of half filled. So what that means is there's limited access in the banking. It's not full access. So again, if we select the banking tab, you can see that the accounts payable role does not have access to bank feeds, does not have access to the bank registers. Now they do have access to credit card charges and the credit card registers, but maybe your accounts payable person needs to see checks, okay? So again, we can see different here, all the different areas when you click in there. So if we click into centers, we can see they're limited to customer, they're limited to employee, but they have full access to the vendor center. And you can see when I change, it'll show what the access is. So customer center, it says partial access. And what it says is they can view the customers only. They cannot do any changes to a customer. Where if we select the vendor center, for example, they have full access, meaning that they can view, they can create, they can modify, delete, print, or view a balance for every vendor on the list. Okay, so now let's talk about how we would customize it. Okay, so I always recommend if you are going to customize any role that you leave the standard role in whole and do not change it, but instead duplicate the role and change the duplicated role. So we'll stick with accounts payable since we've been talking about them. So I'm going to choose duplicate. And you can see now that it's got the same name, same roles, but they've now put the word duplicate. Okay, so you can change this to a different name. So I could change it and say I want this for my accounts payable. Maybe it's role 1. Maybe you're going to have 1, 2, and 3 roles based on what functions. And maybe for role 1, I want them at the vendor center, for example. I want them to be able to let's there, vendor center. I don't want customers. I want just looking at what an example. Okay, so at vendors, right here we've got accounts payable account. We want them to be able to see that. We want them to be able to view, and we want them to be able to print. Maybe we don't want them to print, maybe just view. When it comes to entering bills, they're new, so maybe we want to allow them to enter but not modify, delete, or print. Meaning that if they made a mistake, we want them to bring that to the manager or team lead for that. So 1, it allows coaching to be provided on what happened, but also gives you that line of sight. So that way they are not just making changes. Okay. Item receipts, right now it's listed as full, but the same thing, maybe we want them to just view item receipts. So you see it was on full, but because I changed it and changed it to view, it changed the access level to partial. Okay. Pay bills, I'm going to say none. I wouldn't want a new person at this point to have the access to pay bills. So you can see over here, my green dot is no longer green. Okay, so this is what you would do for all of your roles that you want to create a customized role. So we can do the same thing, maybe our inventory. Let's duplicate that. And maybe let's call this one our, maybe we want to call this our inventory warehouse team lead. I'm just going to leave it as inventory warehouse. Okay, so again, when we come in here and we look at the standard role is, in the centers, they have access to vendors. But maybe we want them just to view. Maybe our warehouse personnel should not be creating new vendors. So we want to allow them to view, but not actually set anything up. We also have this custom. So let's look at the custom. And if we define the custom, we're now able to create a vendor group. So where this comes into importance is in a bigger company, maybe you have different customer types and vendor types, and maybe you want to separate the types for access. So customizing a role allows you to actually limit their access to not just all the vendors, but just to a specific vendor group. So if we click in there, we can see we're going to name the group, and maybe we're going to name it simple group 1, or we could, maybe this is Northwest Territory, whatever would make sense for your group. We're going to decide what falls in the group. So who is going to be in the group, and we can determine it by vendor type. We can determine it by the status, anything that we like. I'm going to choose the vendor type for this one. And we're going to say it equals or not equals. And I'm going to say I want it to equal a vendor type. And these are all of my vendor types. We're going to go look at that. We're going to take that back to navigation of setting up a vendor type. But we're going to say this is going to be for my vendor type materials. Okay. Okay. And then these are all the customers that fall in that group. So we can uncheck if we want and leave this check to say automatically add or remove based on the vendor setup. Okay. Okay, perfect. So that's kind of the navigation and setting up customized roles. You can see that you can do this on every single role inside of QuickBooks. And so what I always tell clients is do this first. Kind of figure out what roles you want in your company file and how deep do they need to go. If we just need one accounts payable role, then maybe the standard role is okay. But if we have multiple team members in departments, we need to determine, do they need different access roles? If so, we can then create customized roles for each one. The next is going to be now adding our users. Okay, so you need to, after you create your customized role list, is now you actually need to add every person that's going to have access to your QuickBooks file. You can have multiple users. It doesn't have more than your license, but what that means is only the number of license that you paid for can be logged in at the same time. So you could technically pay for 3 licenses, but have 10 roles, 10 users set up. It just means that only 3 can be in at the same time. So let's go ahead and let's create a new user. We'll go ahead and create me. You guys can decide if you want it by name. I've seen it both, where they'll create it by name or they'll make it more general. So warehouse, AP, AR, you can set up whatever you want. Leaving the password blank will just allow that user to set it up the first time they log in. And now we need to assign them what their roles are. So I can add multiple roles to a user, whatever I want them. You will see there are some roles that they have to log in with their Intuit user ID, and it will also give you some information to basically a warning. If you're giving them this, they will have access to information such as payroll. So make sure that you do change your permissions if you don't want that. Okay, so that is how we create a new user and customize the roles. So let's hop back to navigation. Okay, so when navigation, you can function from the home screen by selecting the buttons, or you have the down arrows. So it's the same exact thing as the buttons, but it's the words. Or I can click in here in the actual center, and all of my functions are here. So here's my transactions function. Here is creating new or our vendors. So you can see inside of, for example, the vendor center, I have on the left side all of my vendors and what their balance is. You can customize this for what you use and what you see for that user, and you do that by right click and select customize columns, and it's going to show you how you can add columns or take away for what you want to see. The same thing over here in the body. This tells you about the vendor. When I choose a different vendor, you can see that it does change. I can do the same thing and I can customize these roles, but I want to see what's important. Sometimes it's something like I want to see if they have a purchase order, if the memo on the transaction. So you can customize it what you want to see. This front page is the actual transactions that have been created. And you can see different tasks here, tabs. So you can create to-dos, you can add primary contacts, you can add notes, you can decide a note to what we call get pinned. And so it comes up here in the top right-hand corner. If it's a very important note, you can put that here. And then this is just the activity. And then this is item. So if we have to where this item is linked to this vendor, you can see information about the item itself. Let's come back to our home screen. Now I'm going to show you the customer center is the same thing. So I'm selecting the little where it says customers. And it's the same exact concept. We have our customers and open balances, and then the details about our customer center here. Inventory, we have an inventory center, the same thing. And you can see QuickBooks does a really great job of being consistent in their layout. So as I'm going to these different centers, it still looks the same. It still has the feel of, you know, what I'm looking at, so that I don't have to worry about, you know, if I'm in the customer center, it looks totally different. I have to figure out how to navigate in there. It's very consistent. All of the different centers have these blue links to report. Inside of them, you can go directly to a report instead of at our report center. So however you like to function, it'll take you right to it. So inventory managers are going to hang out and live in their inventory center, and they can get to everything that they need. So here's our inventory valuation by site. So this is going to give them all of their active items and what they have on hand as of a date. Okay, you can see I had the same thing at the customer center. I can see open balance for this customer and what they have outstanding. So it's a really great way to get direct information instead of coming over here to our report center and coming down here to the same thing for our open balances. Okay, while we're there, let's talk about the report center. So in the report center itself, you can see that we've got lots of reports, and you can see it's got different tabs. So here's our standard reports that fall under each category. So we've got our company and financials and all of our standard reports. We've got our customers and receivables and all of those. So you can see it's the same way. You can navigate here and select it, or you can come to reports and you're seeing the exact same thing. These are all of those reports that are found in here. Here's your memorized reports. So if you create a report and you customize it, you can choose to memorize it so you don't have to recreate it, customize every time. Okay, so that's our reports area. So I've given you a little bit of navigation on the customers, a little bit on the vendors. Let's talk about the banking functions. So in our banking functions, we've got where we can write checks. This is also where we enter our credit card charges. But also a great feature is our bank feeds. So QuickBooks allows you to connect to your bank, and that way you can have a very accurate balance of what has cleared the bank. It will flow into QuickBooks and it will sit in this bank feeds area for you to then accept them. So for example, this file has 3 different accounts. 2 are bank accounts, 1 is a credit card account. And you can see that as I change, the information about them change. So for example, this one, the bank balance shows it's $5,000, but QuickBooks shows $46,000. That's a pretty big difference. And so this would allow us to always be in sync with what our bank shows and allow for that cash flow reporting that may be needed. So if we look in here, we've got 7 transactions that has cleared the bank, and QuickBooks is saying, what would you like me to do with those? QuickBooks does try to find a match, meaning it looks to see, is this transaction already in the file? If it is not, it is then asking for you to review it and for you to tell QuickBooks what GL accounts should be affected. Okay, so that's our bank feed feature. You can see here that on a transaction, for example, I've got actions, so I can add more details. If, for example, this just says ATM withdrawal for $200, well, maybe I want to break it down. So I want to say I want to add more details. So I can split this into 2 transactions, meaning 2 different GL accounts for this $200. I can link it to a customer job. So it allows you to really drill down and to take each transaction that have cleared your bank and accept them into the file and go ahead and code it for you the way you want it coded. Okay, so let me take us back to our home screen and kind of finish out our navigation. If you are functioning in, for example, inventory management, you can see that we would create a purchase order and it tells you what to do next. I want to receive the inventory. You're not going to enter the bills. You're going to receive the inventory. And you can see that you have the option receive with bill or without bill. And then, of course, we can enter bills against inventory, meaning that the bill itself has inventory attached. And so we want to grab that item receipt. And then, of course, then we're going to pay the bill after it's entered. Same thing on the customer. It tells you your starting point and what's next. I can create an estimate straight to an invoice and straight to payment, or I can convert it to a sales order and then do the same workflow. Okay. Last but not least, I always like to talk about reconciling. So we always recommend we reconcile every balance sheet account when you go into Reconcile itself, you've got a drop down and you can choose your different GL accounts on the balance sheet to reconcile. And then of course, here's all your information you're going to enter using the statement to reconcile that account. Okay, so that's kind of some high-level navigation inside of QuickBooks, as well as customizing the user roles so that everyone can have the access that they need and not more that you don't want them to see. So thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great rest of your week and reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.